So today, let's talk about the Almohad Empire. This was a movement that just exploded out of the mountains to forge a massive empire, unifying pretty much all of North Africa and Spain under a single radical idea. But what happens when the idea that built an empire just isn't enough to hold it together anymore? I mean, the story of the Almohads has it all. A firebrand ideology, absolutely brilliant conquests, and ultimately, these fatal cracks that just tear it apart from the inside. We're going to dive into how this empire rose from total chaos and what brought the whole thing crashing down. Okay, so to really get a handle on the Almohads, you've got to understand the world they came from. We're talking about the Maghreb in the early 12th century, and let me tell you, it was anything but unified. At the time, the whole region was this patchwork of rival powers. And what's interesting is they were all ruled by different branches of the same group, the Sanhadja Berbers. In the west, you had the mighty Almoravids. In the center and east, the Hammadids and Zirids were basically locked in conflict. And to make everything worse, everyone was getting squeezed by Norman invaders from the north and these disruptive migrations from the east. It was a mess. And look, this instability wasn't just political. It was hitting them right in the wallet. The arrival of these nomadic Banu Hilal tribes completely upended the old order. Their whole lifestyle devastated settled agriculture, sure. But even more critically, the chaos they brought with them completely severed the trans-Saharan gold routes. I mean, that was the economic lifeblood of the Eastern kingdoms, and suddenly it was gone. So, with their traditional economy in tatters, coastal cities like Bijaya had to get creative. They pivoted hard. They got into maritime trade, manufacturing, and even a bit of piracy. And here's a wild little detail that shows you just how massive this shift was. Bijaya became so famous for exporting candle wax that its name gave us the French word for candle, bougie. It's a tiny fact, but it reveals this huge economic transformation that was going on. Right, so into this absolute mess, this chaotic and fractured world, step two guys who are about to change everything, a religious visionary and a military genius. First up, you've got Ibn Tumart. Now, he was a Mazmida Berber from the mountains, not one of the desert guys. He'd been studying abroad, and he came back with this super radical ideology he called Tawhid, which basically means unicity. He started preaching that the guys in charge, the Almoravids, were heretics because they described God in human-like terms. For Ibn Tumart, God was this abstract, totally unknowable thing. And I mean, the difference between these two groups, it was night and day. On one side, you've got the Almoravids, the old guard. They're established desert warriors with their own unique customs, like their men famously wearing veils. And on the other side, you've got the Almohads, these mountain reformers preaching a return to a pure Islam. This was a clash of cultures just as much as it was going to be a clash of armies. So Ibn Tumart's fiery preaching got him kicked out of pretty much every major city he went to. So what does he do? He falls back to his homeland in the Atlas Mountains, rallies his fellow Masmuda tribes, and makes a total game-changing declaration. He announces that he is the Mahdi, the prophesied redeemer. And just like that, this wasn't just a theological debate anymore. Oh no, this was a full-blown military and political revolution. But then, right as things are heating up, Ibn Tumart dies. His successor is his most devoted student, Abd al-Mu'min. And here's the kicker. Abd al-Mu'min wasn't a Masmuda Berber like the rest of the leadership. He was an outsider from a different tribe. So to secure his rule, he had to prove himself not just as a spiritual leader, but as an unbelievable conqueror. And boy, did he conquer. Under al-Mu'min, the Almohad rebellion just exploded from a mountain insurgency into this massive wave of conquest that would unify the Maghreb for the first time in centuries. Seriously, the speed of this conquest is just staggering. He starts by dismantling the Almoravids, taking their capital Marrakesh in 1147. Then he just keeps pushing east, toppling the Hammadids by 1152. And by 1160, his armies had swept across all of Ifriqiya, that's modern Tunisia and Libya, all the way to Tripoli. Think about that. In just 15 years, a single unified power now stretched across the entire Maghreb. And the scale of his power we're talking about here, it was just immense. To conquer those eastern territories, he marched with an army of 100,000 men. This wasn't just a military force, it was a statement. I mean, faced with odds like that, a lot of cities just opened their gates. They knew resistance was pointless. But you know how it goes. Even at the absolute height of its power, the Almohad Empire was already showing these tiny cracks in the foundation. See, building an empire is one thing. Holding it all together, that's a whole different challenge. And this is where you start to see the first really clever but dangerous cracks appear. Abd-al-Mumin was a brilliant politician. The original movement was supposed to be led by a council, but he wanted a dynasty. So according to the historian Ibn al-Athir, he basically stages a public protest, getting his allied chiefs to demand that his son be named successor. This bit of political theater worked. He got his hereditary rule, but it totally alienated the powerful Masmuda families who had started the whole revolution. The seeds of resentment were officially planted. So pretty soon, the empire is getting hit from all sides. From the east, you've got Saladin's generals starting to chip away at their territory. From the sea, the last remnants of the Almoravids are launching this devastating guerrilla war from their bases in the Balearic Islands. And all the while, those resentful Masmuda families, the original core of the movement, were just waiting for their moment. So you've got this combination of internal backstabbing and external pressure. It's a total perfect storm. And the collapse, when it finally came, was just as swift and dramatic as the empire's rise had been. The killing blow, the one that really sealed their fate, came from Spain. At the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa in 1212, a united Christian army inflicted an absolutely crushing defeat on the Almohads. This was so much more than a military loss. It completely shattered the myth of their invincibility. The empire's prestige, which was maybe its greatest weapon, was gone. And after that defeat, well, everything just falls apart. The court back in Marrakesh descends into this bloody, chaotic series of coups. As you can see here, caliphs were being poisoned, strangled, and, in one truly bizarre case, the official report said he was gored to death by a cow. Yeah. This chaos at the top led directly to the final break in 1228, when the governor of Ifriqiya, who happened to be a direct descendant of the rival that Abd al-Mu'min had sidelined decades earlier, declared independence. So from that point on, the empire just shatters. The unified state broke apart into these three main successor kingdoms you see here, which would go on to define the map of North Africa for centuries to come. The Maranids in Morocco, the Zionids in the central Maghreb, and the Hafsids in Ifriqiya. In the end, the Almohad dream of a unified Maghreb lasted just a little over a century. It was an empire forged in its intense ideological fire, but it was consumed by the very human forces of ambition and revenge. Which really leaves us with a question that echoes through history. How does an empire built on a powerful idea survive when that idea is no longer enough to hold it all together?